As I shared in previous videos, I graduated from Johns Hopkins with a degree in economics in 2017. Today, I want to do something special. I want to break down my own Johns Hopkins essays that got me admission to the university. Evaluating my essays using my own personal rubric, scoring each of my essays in 3 categories from 1 to 5. The 3 categories are originality, engagement, and eloquence. When I applied, Johns Hopkins required 3 essays. 1 Common App essay, 1 supplemental piece asking why a certain major, and then finally an additional insight piece. Let's start by examining my Common App essay closely, and I'll highlight specifically what worked according to the rubric. Okay, so reading from the start starts with, I pull into the space nearest the tennis courts, my foot resting on the brake pedal. I take a moment to reflect. Today is the first day of the tennis camp I have set up for underprivileged kids. I lean forward to remove my key from the car's ignition. But what's this? It will not bulge. An unsettling feeling creeps into my stomach. Could this portend trouble ahead? So you can see from the very start that the way in which I crafted this essay was to build suspense. So this initial first paragraph does just that. We have some sort of look into a scene, right? But we don't necessarily know what's going to happen with that scene. So let's keep reading. My worry builds. I might not be as inspiring to these children as I hope. Anxiety fills my body while the key is still inexplicably stuck in the ignition. I dial my mother's number. Undisturbed, she simply says, "Did you switch to park first?" Glancing down at the gears, I notice the car set in drive. The key is free. For a moment, my spirit is revitalized. Teaching them may not be so hard. I am simply sharing a passion of mine with others. So you can see that we often talk about showing rather than telling in an essay, and that I sort of show anxiety rather than actually explicitly say that I'm anxious, right? Then I say, another car pulls in across from me, and 6-year-old twins walk out. They approach. And then we have a scene change. We gather around for the last activity of today's practice. The children have begun to show symptoms of too many hours in the summer sun. I suggest a water break before we continue, but they adamantly refuse, immersed in the joy of learning the game. So you can see that, like, by no means do I use that much advanced vocabulary. It's more so just simply explaining what was happening during these scenes, right? But you can do so in an eloquent manner without necessarily using very pompous vocabulary, right? And then going on, it says, I begin to introduce the volleying drill. I find myself thinking not about what I am saying, but how, after endless hours of unreturned phone calls, of time-consuming advertising, my creation has finally reached its fruition. I am actually teaching these children tennis, and much to my surprise, they appear to love it. So this is sort of like that determination aspect, that diligence that I show in the essay, right? As I look around at the children's faces, I remember how I felt when I first played the game. Their facial expressions embody pleasure in its most pristine form, one not tainted by worry or stress, one not constrained by inexperience or inability, one that is contagious. Unable to articulate anything beyond the simplest sentence, I just smile and exclaim, free time. Right, so there's a lot of parallelism within these sentences, and so I try to sort of really eloquently describe, right, what the situation is and how I have this realization that's going to be coming in the following sentences. Driving home, I remind myself that I am the benefactor, not the recipient. I provide for them, they do not provide for me. Why do I, of all people, feel like the one who has received? As I would soon come to understand, it is because I do receive. I am not creating a charity for these children, I am creating a community with these children. A community in which every single member is both a benefactor and recipient. We all give, we all receive. So ultimately, I end with a realization in terms of the core of charity, the core of benevolence is not only one-sided, it's that you have this sort of reciprocal effect, and that's the reason why, I like helping people, right? And so you can see that with this essay. Again, I don't necessarily use advanced vocabulary. My message is not that complex, but I sort of just describe in a very succinct, concise manner exactly how this experience shaped who I am as a person. And so I used to want to be a professional tennis player, and so as a result of this experience, you can really see that it wasn't only for my personal game, but I ultimately wanted to give back what I learned through tennis. And so that was very much reflected in this essay. you can see that we have three categories, one being originality, another being engagement, and finally the last one being eloquence. In terms of my essay, we look at what a 5 takes for each category. So with originality, it says that a 5 requires highly innovative, unique perspectives vividly presented. So regarding this originality category, to be completely honest with you, I don't necessarily think I was too innovative in terms of the perspectives that I brought forth. The idea of helping people, the benefit being reciprocal, is not necessarily a completely new concept. And so for the originality category, I would not give myself a 5. I would give myself around a 4, because it is original and it's creative, but not necessarily anything mind-blowing, right? In terms of engagements, so whether the narrative is deeply engaging, or in the case of a 4, just consistently engaging, effectively maintaining the reader's interests, I would also give myself a 4 for this category. I think that from the start, the essay is engaging in terms of building up the tension, but not necessarily consistently throughout do I feel like I maintain the reader's interests. And so more so than a 5, I would again give myself a 4 for this category. In terms of eloquence though, I think the way in which I sort of craft my sentences, in terms of using parallelism, in terms of incorporating imagery, despite not necessarily using advanced vocabulary, very much I write in a way that flows very well and is easy to read, so I would actually give myself a 5 for this eloquence category. And so the total score for this particular essay, I would give myself a 13 out of 15. So looking back 10 years later, in terms of how do I feel like I could improve this essay? So I think the most important thing that I could have done that I didn't necessarily do was not only take the experience that I had and explain that experience, but then take that experience and explain specifically moving forward how I would use my realization to try to contribute to society, and I didn't necessarily do that. I think if I had incorporated that perspective, it would have made a more persuasive essay in general. Okay, so now that we're done editing my Common App essay for Hopkins, in the next part 2 of this video series, I'm going to be editing specifically my supplemental essays. There's 2. And so tune in to the next part for strategies regarding the supplemental essays for Hopkins. Thank you.